Happy Halloween, everybody. Today we're going to do something a little different. Instead of covering a badass war hero or an individual that did some crazy shit, we're going to dive into a series of chilling cold cases from the 1970s in Waverly, Iowa. 3 young women vanished, were found murdered in eerily similar ways, and no one has ever been held accountable. These cases are often called the Waverly Stranglings or the Waverly Three. Let's try to piece together what is known and what still haunts that town.
It's history on repeat.
Hell yeah.
Before we begin, I do have to admit I have a slight personal connection with these killings. And no, not in that way. But not only did I spend a large part of my life going to school and working in Waverly, which I still do, but I've had direct contact with people who were in the area and possibly interacted with some of the victims. Let me explain. These stories were completely unknown to me until about 2 years ago, when at that time, my father and I had met up for lunch when he just nonchalantly drops a bombshell on me. He tells me a previous family friend had called him and accused my father of being the murderer. Crazy, right? My dad reminds this person that he was overseas at the time and couldn't have anything to do with it, because Vietnam was a thing and my dad just happened to get drafted. But this is the perfect example of the problem that surrounds these cold cases. There's so many factors involved that a lot of people are quick to point fingers in desperation to solve these murderers. Because honestly, we're running out of time. With these cases happening during the 70s, everyone has the same sentiment. They want this killer and or killers caught. So with that said, now you understand why this story was put on my radar. Let's get into what we do know. Waverly, Iowa. Small, tight-knit, mostly quiet in the 1970s. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, or at least knew of them. But in the span of 5 years, darkness crept in. Between 1971 and 1976, 3 women, Valerie Kloslowski, Julianne Benning, and Marie Lisa Peak, disappeared and were later discovered murdered in rural areas around town. The similarities have led many to believe they might be connected. Investigators, locals, and true crime enthusiasts have long speculated that these aren't coincidences. Let's start with the earliest victim, Valerie Lynn Kloslowski. On Sunday, June 13th, 1971, Valerie and a friend, Luann Hicks, had a picnic in the Waverly Park during the afternoon, then spent time strolling around town. They later discovered that Valerie went home. However, later that day, she was invited by another friend to go to the local pool. Valerie agreed and left with friend Cindy Nugren, walking together the half-mile to the town's swimming hole. Upon arrival, Cindy told police that Valerie recognized someone sitting in a car outside of the pool. She told Cindy to go ahead and go in without her and that she'd catch up. What's slightly ominous, though, is Valerie remarked before splitting ways with Cindy, saying, quote, "I need to talk to him. If I don't, he'll get mad at me." Yeah, talk about red flags. So Cindy went into the pool without much thought, and after a while, though, she grew a little bit nervous because Valerie was taking quite a while. So she decided to go check on her. When she exited the area, she saw Valerie's belongings, but no Valerie. The man in the car was also MIA. And here's where eyewitness accounts get a bit confusing. So here's a few accounts in no particular timeline of Valerie's last known whereabouts after the pool. At some point, Valerie went back to Luann's house, intending to ask her to accompany her for the rest of the evening. When Luann wasn't home, she apparently spoke with an older sibling of Luann's and then left. At roughly 8:30 p.m., she was seen by her older sister, Denise, walking across Highway 218. That was one of the last confirmed sightings of her alive, which I think as a witness statement is probably accurate. It's her sister, so yeah, she's going to recognize her own sister. Valerie's grandmother had told her to be home by 9 p.m. before she left, but Valerie didn't return. Where around 10 p.m. that night, Valerie's father alerted the authorities, and unfortunately for all parties involved, they didn't have to wait long. On June 15, 1971, her body was discovered 2 days later by two boys walking along a creek in a rural area near a gravel road under a bridge. She was found strangled. The force was so great that her larynx was fractured. Her body was found nearly nude. The only clothing remaining was upper garments pulled up around her shoulders. The discovery site was about 3 miles west of Denver, Iowa, near Waverly. Investigators at the time weren't able to determine whether she was killed at that location or transported there after being killed elsewhere. They also wouldn't say whether or not she had been sexually assaulted, which means, what probably happened. Over 150 interviews were conducted in the months after, and many leads were followed, but no arrests ever resulted. This case alone haunted the community, but as years passed, it faded into the background. That was until the year 1975. The next unfortunate soul taken way too soon from us was Julie Ann Benning on November 28, 1975. Julie left her grandmother's home in Waverly, where she had been living while working in town. She walked into her job at the Sir Lounge, a local gentleman's club, where she waited tables and sometimes worked the door. Although her family disapproved of her job and was stout Christians, they knew it was temporary. Because although Julie had many interests, working in a strip club wasn't one of them. Instead, she was saving enough money to pursue a career or attend college. Her family knew this and had full trust in her decisions. Now, although Julie wasn't a stripper, her job didn't come without, we'll say, sexual requests. A few of the regulars periodically offered her money to leave with them for free, but Julie always declined, even writing about a few of these encounters in her diary. Julie was last seen for sure walking down Brammer Avenue on her way to work at the Sir Lounge, as stated before. But she never arrived for her shift. At first, her boss at the club didn't think anything of it because, it's a holiday weekend. But after missing her shift the following day, the club called her parents to inquire about her whereabouts. Her father reported her missing immediately. He said Julie wouldn't just take off, especially not without her purse and definitely not without saying goodbye. Police began their search, but the leads were few. Some claimed to see her near a pickup truck, possibly blue or green, parked near the Sir Lounge. There is a report that she might have stopped at a shoe repair shop around 5:05 p.m. to pick up shoes she left there. Others reported nothing. And just like Valerie's case, the eyewitnesses' accounts seem kind of confusing with no certain timeline. But what disturbed investigators is Julie's diary was missing, and any entries that may have been written days before her disappearance were gone. An alleged witness did many years later attempt to convince police that he did see Julie that night on November 28th at the Sir Lounge. He said there was a struggle between Julie and some of the others in the club, and then he saw her seemingly unconscious in a truck outside the club a few hours later. Authorities haven't been able to confirm this story, but I wanted to add it in here anyways. Regardless of the various witness testimonies to Julie's story, her story unfortunately ends the same. Because on March 18th, 1976, a county worker near Shell Rock, Iowa, was clearing debris from a culvert off a gravel road. Inside it was the decomposed body of a young woman. It was Julie. She had been strangled, she was naked, and her remains had been washed into the culvert, likely by runoff from snow and ice over the winter. Because of the decomposition, the medical examiner couldn't determine if she had been sexually assaulted, and her clothes were never recovered. Retired Brammer County Deputy Rich Greenlee later recalled that these investigations were exhausting. Long days and nights, files piled high, and photos pinned to the wall as reminders that the work was far from done. And unfortunately for them, they were right. Finally, we come to Marie Lisa Peaks. On September 7th, 1976, the day after Labor Day, Lisa's nude, battered body was found in a ditch under a lone cottonwood tree, about a quarter-mile north of Waverly city limits, along a gravel road near the John Anhalt farm. She was a 19-year-old sophomore at Wartburg College, majoring in journalism. She had returned to campus just a few days before on September 5th. Friends say she had planned to go shopping that afternoon at the Willow Lawn Shopping Center in Waverly. When she never returned to her dorm for a scheduled date, she was reported missing. Autopsy findings showed she had been sexually assaulted, which the first was officially confirmed, and she had died by suffocation plus a broken neck. All three of these murders just make me so sad, especially as a father. If you have kids, you get it. Stories like these just hit different. Anyways, like Julie, no clothing was found at the scene. This next part, though, makes Lisa slightly different than the others. Earlier that year, Lisa had been involved in providing information to authorities about a sex extortion scheme run by a used car salesman, John Joseph Carmody Jr. of Mason City. Carmody had blackmailed many women, threatening them, and was later convicted of rape and extortion and sentenced to 40 years. Lisa and Chuck Offenberger, a Des Moines Register reporter, had planned to co-write a book about Carmody's scheme. On August 23, 1976, Lisa wrote Carmody of her plans. A week before her death, his attorney sent Offenberger a letter claiming that he and his professional writer associates would produce a literary work of their own. Some reports suggest Lisa had received threats after her involvement in the investigation, but just like the others, no one really knows what happened. But authorities haven't given up. In May 2010, state and county officials exhumed Lisa's body, hoping to extract new DNA evidence. But the coffin had deteriorated and her remains were too degraded to yield unusable genetic material. Sadly, Lisa's parents passed away without ever seeing justice in their daughter's case, and that looks likely for Valerie and Julie's families as well. Let's review real quick, because I just dropped a lot on your plate, and I want to make sure you're picking up what I'm throwing down. Looking at these three cases side by side, the overlapping is glaring. All three victims were young females. All were dumped on gravel roads in rural ditches or creek banks outside of town limits. Strangulation is clearly the cause of death. In all cases, clothing was missing. In the case of Lisa, sexual assault was confirmed. In the others, decomposition made that determination difficult. However, I think it was pretty clear Valerie was as well. And lastly, the time span, over 5 years, but clustered in the mid-1970s, with two of the three occurring within months of each other. Investigators have long speculated that the murders of Benning and Peak are certainly connected. FBI criminologists also confirm this as well. Some officers also consider potential links to the earlier Kloslowski case, but proving it has been difficult to say the least. Because playing devil's advocate for our boys in blue, they have a lot of obstacles to overcome. Time and decomposition have destroyed any evidence. No solid provable suspects have come forward. Reluctance or fear among witnesses, especially in the Carmody extortion connections. Rumors, red herrings, and community gossip complicate credible leads, like the example I give of my own father and the only reason I found out about this whole mess to begin with. And lastly, but arguably most important, limited funding and shifting priorities over decades. The Iowa's cold case unit's funding was cut in 2011, though they have confirmed that the Waverly Three remains at the top of their priority list. I know I started this video trying to share some positive but spooky season vibes with all of you, but we also need to remember, these are not just random names or cold case files. Valerie, Julie, and Lisa were daughters, students, friends with dreams, hopes, and lives ahead of them. Their cases remain open, not because law enforcement failed to try, but because time, decay, missing pieces, and human silence that have allowed the truth to remain hidden. If you're watching this and you have anything, a memory, a lead, a tip, it matters. Even a small detail can shift an investigation decades later. If you have any information, contact any of the parties that you see on the screen. Thank you for watching History on Repeat. I like to, as I said earlier, cover crazy battles, badass soldiers, or incredible individuals, but occasionally I like to revisit history and shine a light on what was lost, forgotten, or overlooked. The story of the Waverly Three deserves to be told, and it deserves justice. If you like this video, like it, share it, and comment, and let me know if I missed anything or if you have an idea for my next deep dive. Hit subscribe. Do it. And until next time, stay curious, stay sharp, and I'll see you in the next one. Happy Halloween, everybody.
It's history on repeat.
Hell yeah.